Welcome everyone to the Animating Natural Walks webinar. And there's my cat. She was there the whole time waiting until the actual start of the webinar. Welcome everyone. So today we're going to be going over animating natural walks. We've got Don Kim, one of the AM mentors and one of the awesome directors here at Animation Mentor. So I'll let you take it away, Don, and yeah, feel free to jump right in.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bo. I want to thank you all for joining me today for this webinar, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys can get something out of it. Um, want to introduce myself a little bit. I've been teaching at AM for about 18 years. I've taught mostly body mechanics, but I did teach fundamentals for the first, I don't know, maybe 8 years of my stay here at AM. And I've also taught a bit of acting as well. So I have kind of touched on the different classes here at AM. And professionally, I've been working in animation for about 28 years. I started as a traditional animator at Disney, and I worked in traditional animation for a good 6 years, and then I transitioned into CG. And from there, I worked in TV CG projects. These were early days back in the 90s when CG was still becoming more of a thing. And then I got an opportunity to work at Blue Sky Studios. At the time, it was in New York City, or not New York City, but New York State, White Plains, city of White Plains, before they went to Connecticut. And I got to work on Robots. I don't know if you guys remember that movie. It's a little bit on the older side, but it's a really great experience. And I also got to work on Ice Age 2. So it was a really great time there, learning a lot, kind of growing my skill set. And then since that time, I moved back to, I'm Canadian, by the way. I moved back to Canada. And since then, I've been working as a animator, as a storyboard artist. And for the past about 12 years, I've been working as a series director for television series. You can probably check out my IMDb. You can see what projects I've been working on. Currently, I'm directing the reboot of Dora the Explorer for Nickelodeon, which is on Paramount Plus. So if you guys have Paramount Plus and you guys want to check it out, maybe you have younger siblings or kids that might be interested. Seasons 1 and 2 are up on Paramount Plus, so please check it out. So let's talk about walks. So walks are really, really important for a lot of reasons. The first reason is that creatures walk, humans walk. So it is a form of locomotion that is, very common, and we need to walk in order to move from point A to point B. And as animators, we need to know how to animate a walk because characters walk, right? Um, the other thing is that walks are also a very important component in developing a character's physicality. So if you were to have a character, know what it looks like, know what it sounds like, the voice actor, or even just like the creature sounds, have an idea of maybe what the personality of that character would be, you still have to figure out how that character would move. Um, Typically, studios do like a test, an acting test with some scratch dialogue from the actor that's playing the character, or just some other audio that they find that would maybe work with that character, and then do some tests to develop some body language and physicality. But another area of that is animating the character's walk. So you'll notice, like when you watch behind the scenes of some animated movies, there's a bunch of video of characters walking, right? They have different types of walks. It just helps to give a um, you know an idea of how that character should move on screen, and that way it's specific to that character. The other thing about walks is that there's also quadruped walks. So we have creatures on all four legs. So that's another component of walk animation that we need to uh, have a good understanding of, because as animators, we're not just going to animate characters on two legs. Two legs would be animating characters on four legs as well. So that's another aspect walks that are important and to think about um, as we work as animators. So let's go to the next slide. So we're gonna identify the key components of a walk and the mechanics that are involved. And specifically, we're gonna look at a vanilla walk. So we're not gonna look at a walk with like any type of stylization. Uh, we're gonna keep it very bare bones and very simple, and kind of look at something that looks more natural and less cartoony. It'll have a little bit of a exaggerated feel to it because obviously with animation you do want to exaggerate, even if it's a subtle bit of exaggeration. There's always a level of it in animation generally, but we're going to try to focus more on a natural looking, more vanilla type walk. So here are uh, some thumbnails, some basic thumbnails of what components, what poses make up a standard walk. So we have the contact pose, which is this first pose here, number 1. We have the extreme down. That's when the weight of the character kind of pushes down on both the legs after the foot passing foot hits the ground. We go to the third drawing, which is the pass position. This is when the passing leg, the leg that's coming off the ground, kind of swings through. Then we have the extreme up, which is the fourth drawing, and that's when your character has a little bit more lift in its stride, and the passing leg is starting to swing forward toward the next contact, and then we're back to contact. So the fifth drawing here. So you'll notice how there is definitely an up and down to the walk. And when you watch reference of action reference of somebody walking, you don't really notice the up and down on their bodies. It's more subtle. I mean, some people do have a more of a pronounced up and down, more of a bounce to their walk. But normally, when you see people walking, you don't really see it to the naked eye. But it is there. There is that weight of the torso kind of pushing down on the legs, and then the legs pushing back up through the extreme up position. So that's important aspect to a walk in general, just to get a nice sense of weight. You don't want the walk to be just kind of moving along a straight line. You want to have a little bit of up and down to really sell the weight of the steps. And the swing of the arms is another thing that is common in a standard walk. Some people swing their arms more, some people swing them less, some people don't really swing them at all. But for a standard walk, you want to have a nice opposing swing of the arm relative to the leg on that side. So we talked a little bit about why are walks important. The other thing about the mechanics of a walk that is key is that in any type of locomotion where one foot is coming off the ground and you're supporting your weight on a single foot, there's what you call a weight shift. So if you were to stand up like right now, if you wanted to, or later on, and this is something that is very uh, you know obvious, but if you were to stand up and just take one foot off the ground and balance your weight on one foot, you'll notice that your hips or your body, your torso kind of shifts over to your weight bearing foot, right? And that's because you have to maintain your balance. Like you couldn't just keep your body where it was. If you lifted up one of your legs, then you would fall over, obviously. So your body just naturally, instinctually kind of just shifts over to favor the weight bearing leg. And the other thing that might happen is that your hip on the weight bearing side might push up a little bit, because you got to think about the weight of your torso is pushing down on your weight bearing legs. Your weight bearing leg is pushing up on your hip. So it might just kind of tilt your hip up a little bit on that side. So that's a key component to any type of locomotion where, again, one foot comes off the ground and the other foot's taking on the weight of the body. And that's a really, really important mechanic that we need to understand and be able to execute. Another thing about walks is that it utilizes a lot of the principles of animation. So that's something that you learn in fundamentals, as you're starting to understand animation more. There are those 12 principles that we kind of go by and try to use in our animation. And there's a lot of those principles that are integral in creating a convincing walk. So that's also an important aspect to being able to animate a walk convincingly. And we talked a little bit about number 4. Walks are used to develop character, physicality, and body language. That's another really key component to why it's important to know how to animate a convincing and mechanically sound walk. So what are some of the principles of animation, or what are they? So squash and stretch, anticipation, staging, straight ahead action and pose. But this is more workflow, straight ahead action and pose to pose. So how you're going to animate a scene. Follow through and overlapping action, slow ins and slow outs. That's more timing. Arcs, how a part of the body moves through space. Secondary action, timing, exaggeration, solid drawing, and appeal. So some of the aspects here that definitely would be used in animating walk, squash and stretch, pose to pose, follow through and overlapping action, 100%. Again, overlapping action in the arms, slow ins and outs, getting some nice hang time at the extreme up, and slow in, slow outs, and the extreme down. Arcs, 100%. Kind of arcs with the legs, with the feet, and with the arms. Timing, obviously. So there's a lot of these principles that we have to be thinking about and executing in our walk. So in a generic walk, the timing of 2 steps is usually 24 frames, not 25. That's a typo. It's 24 frames. So from contact to contact, and I'm going to look at some video reference in a second. So from stride pose to stride pose, when the legs are out, it's 12 frames. And then another step would be another 12. So that would give you 24 frames. The reason why we call that a cycle, it's not really a cycle, but you got to think of, the first contact pose would be the same as, in terms of like the stride and how the arms are posed, would be the same, similar to the one at frame 24. So if you were to animate this walk on a treadmill, like walking on the spot, you would only have to animate 24 frames of the walk, and then you can just kind of play it in a loop and it would just walk. The character would just walk. That's done mostly like in TV animation. In features, we don't really do cycles that repeat because when we're animating walk, we don't want a certain movement, like the leg movement or the arm movement, to continue to repeat the same over and over again. Then it starts to feel more robotic. So we want to make sure that each step and each swing of the arm and each up and down of the body and each head bob is just slightly different from the one after, right? That way you get a little bit of asymmetry in the movement. Nobody walks, other than like a mechanical thing like a robot, nobody walks the exact same amount of distance and the exact same speed every single step, right? So we want to make sure that we have a little bit of sort of asymmetry in the timing and also in the posing to make it look more natural. And then I'm going to show you some reference in a second so we can look at the reference and kind of identify those key poses that we looked at earlier in the thumbnails. And I'm just going to touch on this a little bit, but in terms of like how you shift the weight versus a male and a female, there could potentially be a little bit of a difference, though not necessarily. Maybe in a female walk, there might be a little bit more swing in the hips versus a male, but it's not always the case, but just something to note. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to back out of this for a second. And I'm going to, first of all, show you this reference. And I'm just going to play it. So I just wanted you to just note the frame count here at the bottom so we can kind of see together that, yes, typically a walk is 24 frames. So let's check this out. So that's close. It's 11 frames there for that contact, and then back to the other one. Just so you can confirm that I'm not lying about this, so you can see it for yourself. Boom, see? Frame 24 is the next contact. So typically, 2 steps for just like a very generic type walk, that is the timing. Um, and breaking it down even more for animation, uh, it's every change of pose, like going from key pose to breakdown, it's 3 frames. So that's where you can kind of divvy it up. So let's look at these poses in a bit more detail. So just going to go back in here. So we have our contact pose, right? We have our extreme down. You can see his body kind of dips down a bit, his legs bend. We have the pass position. He's starting to come up a little bit. And you can see the passing leg is starting to swing through. We have our extreme up. He goes up a little bit higher. You can see there's a little bit of a lift of his heel. His passing leg is swinging through. And then he drops down into the next contact, right? And you can see that this contact pose is the opposite of this one. It's the opposite legs and opposite arms. But if you were to take one more step, it would be the same side. It would be the same leg and the same arm um, swinging. So it would hook up. So let's look at the front view here. So this is looking more at the weight shift that's happening. So you'll notice here on this first drawing or the first image here that the body, even though there's a slight bit of a curve to his torso, for the most part, his center of gravity or his hips are centered between both of the feet, and his hips are also flat. So I drew these 2 lines. You can see here through the extreme down, he starts to shift his weight a little bit over to his weight-bearing leg. In this case, it's his right leg or screen left. So he's starting to shift a bit to the left, and they're starting to get a little bit of tilt up on that side. Now we go into the pass position, which is this middle image. This is where we're going to max out on the shift and tilt. So this is where you have the most shift, and this is where you have the most tilt in his hips. And as you can see, if I were to draw a straight line, and another way to kind of determine if your character or your pose has a solid sense of balance is that if you were to draw a straight line, straight vertical line from the point of support up, then you just kind of weigh the masses on either side of that line. If it feels like it's kind of equal, then you know your character is in balance. So in this case, you can see that the shift over just helps with that. Through the extreme down, he's starting to ease out now. He's starting to come out of that weight shift. He still hasn't gone back to his normal position, but he's starting to come out a little bit. He's still favoring the weight bearing leg, but he's just easing out just a bit. So he's coming out a little bit, and his hips are flattening a little bit. And then back to contact, everything levels out again. His hips go flat, and his body is now centered again between his feet. So now what I want to do is I want to do a brief demo of blocking a walk. And this is not going to be a super thorough because we have limited time here. I'm just going to do a basic blocking, mostly just of the key poses and breakdowns. Then I'll show you a version of the blocking that is more filled out, more well-rounded, and then I'll show you a version of the walk splined, so you can kind of see how the character would move fully splined and moving as it should. So the first thing I would do with the blocking pass, and by the way, if you guys don't understand what a blocking pass is just kind of going through the basic posing and timing, kind of more of a just kind of getting a feel for the action and not necessarily animating it. I mean, animating is more like the splining side where you're actually using splines and getting into more of the nitty gritty of the overlap and the timing and whatnot. But blocking is more just kind of like seeing if the basic posing and the timing is working. And typically we use step curves when we're doing our blocking pass. We don't want to worry too much about transitions because transitions is the stuff that kind of slows you down. We just want to kind of pop into one pose into the next, just to kind of see if it's working at a certain level before we proceed into spline. The other thing I would do right off the bat with this character is that I would bring the feet in. So when you first get Stella, or this character here, and typically most characters, the feet are, let's zero this out here. The feet are set right underneath the hips like this, right? So with the walk, that would look a bit odd. And the other thing is, if the feet were so wide apart, you would have to have a lot of shifting side to side. You don't want that. It's going to feel a little bit too wobbly. So what I typically do is I just kind of bring them in. So I just bring them in a little closer to one another, and that way they look a bit more natural, but also you don't have to have as much side to side shifting. So let's look at the poses from the side view. So the first one would be your contact pose, right? So we're just going to key this in quick. So you can have a little bit of foot roll here. So this contact pose, you want to make sure that the front leg is straight, but the back leg should have a subtle bend in it. So maybe just a little bit more of a bend. You also want to have a bit of a rotation forward on the cog center of gravity, or the torso. You just want to make sure that the weight feels like it's sort of in front, right? You don't want her to be standing straight up like this. Just give her a slight rotation forward in X. And then you also want to have a little bit of, Y rotation in the hips, because as the passing leg is swung forward, is also pulling the hip forward on that side, right? So the hip would be swung forward a bit on the passing leg side. So if I were to let's look at this in a bit more top-down view. It's a little hard to see, but the hip is kind of rotated forward a bit here, as you can see on the passing leg. So back to side view. And the thing about the arms is that you would also have some Y rotation in it as well, but that would be the opposite rotation to the hips, because the arm would be swinging opposite to the leg, be this way actually. You'd have this arm kind of swinging forward a bit, then you would have the opposite arm swinging back a bit, right? And then we're going to go into the extreme down pose. So again, like I said earlier, every 3 frames, there should be a change of pose. So we're going to go into the extreme down. Extreme down, all that's happening really is that the body is kind of moving forward a bit and it's coming down. And then foot would go flat, contact, bit more foot roll on the back foot. That, and then you would have the arms start to swing back the other way. And then the other arm would start to swing back this way. Give me 1 second here. Okay, there we go. So contact, extreme down. Just gonna swing this arm a little bit further over. And then we're gonna go to pass position. So frame 6 is pass position. Again, every 3 frames, there's a change of pose. So we're gonna go into the pass position here. On the passing position, you want to make sure that the center of gravity, or the cog, is centered right above that weight bearing leg. Then you're going to have the passing foot dragging back. The reason why you want to have the passing foot look like it's dragging is because you want to get that feeling that the foot kind of rolled off its toe as it came off the ground. Like, you don't want it to feel like the foot just kind of lifts off the ground. You want to have a nice sense of like pressure along the length of the foot. so that when it comes off the ground, it's actually rolling off its tip. So again, here you want to make sure that the cog is right above that weight bearing leg. And then we're going to zero out the Y rotation and the hips and then the shoulders, because at this point, the legs are parallel to one another and the arms should be pretty much parallel to one another. So we don't have to have any Y rotation at that point. Just like that. So contact, extreme down, pass position, right? And then we're going to go into the extreme up. So the extreme up is the character is a bit off balance at this point, because once you pass the pass position, you've kind of committed to the next step. So at this point, she's off balance because she knows she's going to take her step. So it's okay that her center of gravity is now offset from her weight bearing leg. And then we're going to swing this lower leg through like this. So the thing that you want to avoid at the extreme up is that you don't want to have the knee too high up or too far forward. Now, the reason why is because in a vanilla walk, you need to have 2 frames of straight leg at the contact or leading into the contact, because 1 frame isn't enough for that straight leg to read. So you need frame 12, which is the contact pose, and you need frame 11, which is the frame before. Those 2 frames need to be straight. It needs to be a straight leg. So basically, you only have 1 frame, which is going to be frame 10, to ease into that straight leg. If you have this passing leg too far back like this, what's going to happen is that you have a big spacing gap to travel over a single frame, and you'll get a pop in that leg. So just to kind of help you to ease into that straight leg a little bit smoother, you just kind of swing this leg through a little bit more, just to kind of get a smaller jump in spacing. Just as a kind of aside, with spacing and timing, they kind of go hand in hand. So if you have movement from frame 1 to frame 2, and the spacing is nice and big, then it will move faster. But if you have that same frame 1 to 2, but the spacing is very small, then the movement will be slower. So spacing is something that creates timing. So the bigger the spacing, the faster something moves. The smaller the spacing, the slower it moves, right? So that's why I'm trying to close the spacing here a little bit, so I can try to ease into the straight leg. And this is more for the splining part of it later, but I'm already trying to set myself up here in the blocking pass to help with that. So then we're going to have, the arms continue to swing. Just grab that curve. No. Here. So extreme up and then back to contact. Drop down a little bit, and this leg's going to swing through. Oh, gotta watch the pull vector here. Okay. So you're gonna swing the leg through, go straight, and then just gonna down a slight bit. There we go, and a little bit of foot roll on this back foot. Then we're gonna have some hip rotation here. And then we'll just add a little bit more swing to the arms. So just like that. So that's one step. I didn't key in any overlapping action in the arms quite yet. I'm going to show you another version in a second where the poses are a bit more fleshed out. So I'll do that right now, and then I'll look at it. We'll look at it from the front view too to kind of show the weight shift and what happens in the body as Stella takes a step. Okay, so let's go ahead and fast forward here into. Okay, so this is the more fleshed out walk, and you can see how the arms are now overlapping. So that's where you get the successive breaking of joints and overlapping action. You can see how the stride kind of changes a bit per step. So this one's a bit shorter, this one's a bit wider. So this is a way of working just to create more, like I said, natural feel to the walk. So it's not the exact same values repeating, right? You don't want to do that for something that's more organic. And obviously we're animating humanoid characters, so they are organic. So you want to make sure that the movements don't repeat. So let's look at it from the front, and we can kind of focus in on the weight shift. So like we saw earlier in those images of the live action reference and how that person was shifting his weight from one leg to the other, we're going to be using that same those same concepts in how we're going to animate Stella here. So you can see in this first pose, this is the contact pose, that the hips are flat, right? There's no RZ value on it, as you can see here. And then the cog, the TX, which would be the side to side, that's what this is. It's zeroed out, right? So that's at the contact pose. Then when we move into the extreme down, you'll notice that there's a little bit of shift and a little bit of tilt. So the TX value here is 1.3, which means there's a little bit of movement to screen right or to her left leg. And then on the IK hips, on the RZ, I got 2.6, which means again, there's a little bit of tilt up on her left side, right? Or screen right. Then we go into the pass position, and this is where you're going to have the most shift and tilt like we talked about earlier. So we have more TX shift on the cog, which is the torso, and then we have more RZ tilt on the hips, on the IK hips, to help, again, to sell the fact that there's weight being bared on the weight bearing leg, and in order for her to maintain her balance. And then we go into the extreme up. So at the extreme up pose, this is where she starts to ease out. So she's starting to come out of the weight shift because now she knows she's going to, remember we talked about before in the side view, she's off balance at the extreme up on the profile view because she knows she's going to take the step. So same thing here. She knows she's going to take the step. The next pose is the contact pose. So she's already starting to kind of come out of the weight shift. She's not fully out of it. She's just probably coming out like 75%. And so we're going to have a reduced value in the TX. We're going to have a reduced value in the RZ. And then back to contact, which is right here, everything zeroes out again. Because at this point, at the contact pose, both feet are hitting the ground. So it's able to support the weight equally on either leg. So there's no physical motivation for any type of shifting or tilting, because before it was on one leg, so it made sense that she shifted her weight over to that side in order to maintain her balance so she doesn't fall over. But once both feet are on the ground, you don't need to have any type of shifting or tilting. The extreme down, the reason why she has some shift and tilt here is because, again, she's setting herself up for the next step. So she's already starting to shift her weight. It's not that she has to because both feet are on the ground. She's just kind of setting herself up because in the next pose, the foot comes off the ground, right? So she's already just starting to shift her weight at that point. So I'll just play this through. Let me just go to profile again. I'm just going to play it through a few times for you guys to look at. So this is a blocking pass, step curves. And let's look at it from the front so you can kind of see the way that she's shifting her weight. So it's not super broad, right? You don't want to go too crazy with the weight shift or the tilt. Again, we're trying to animate something natural. We're not trying to animate anything that's overly stylized or overly exaggerated. We want to try to keep it natural. There is a degree of exaggeration in it, however. When you see people walk, you don't really notice all the stuff that's happening in this walk. But we take all that information from the reference that's actually happening in real life, and then we just kind of push it a bit. We kind of exaggerate a little bit so it reads better. It works better for the character. This character's proportions are a bit more stylized, so it kind of works better for that. And it's also just stronger, like a stronger movement, stronger motion, and the mechanics play a lot better if we just kind of tweak it, just give it a bit more of a push. Okay, so let's have a look at the spline version now. So this is the spline version. So let's talk a little bit. Remember, I was talking a little bit about the leg swing, how it's kind of easing into the straight leg. So we're going to look at that, and hopefully this will make a bit more sense to you as I'm showing you what's happening here. So if you look at this back leg, let me just zoom in a bit. So if you look at the back leg here, from this pose, the contacted extreme down, all that's happening is that that leg is growing in its bend. So is the front leg. They're just growing in its bend because, the weight of the carriage is pushing down on legs. So obviously the legs are going to bend, right? And then again, looking at this back leg, from this pose, extreme down to the pass position, what's happening is that she's rolling off the tip of her toe, as you can see here, right? You don't want that foot just to kind of lift off the ground because then it's going to feel like it's being pulled up on string. You want to feel like there's pressure on that foot. So it's kind of rolling off the tip, right? And then here it's dragging back to the pass position. And then through here, because this is like the fastest point of the swing of the leg right through here, we can just flip the foot. And the reason why I'm flipping the foot is because I don't want to have the foot dragging or pointing down because then I would have to hike up the knee. I want to keep the knee as low as I can for two reasons. One is the arc, just kind of smooth out the arc of that knee, but also, like I said before, try to ease into the straight leg. So try to keep that knee low. And this is the two frames of straight. So you got frame 11 is straight and frame 12 is straight, right? I'm trying to slow into the straight leg. That's my goal. I want to slow into it so I can kind of cushion into it. I don't want it to hit that straight leg too hard because it's going to pop. So this is my extreme up pose, and you can see how the knee is low, and then that lower leg is kind of swung through a good amount. And this is my frame 10. This is the frame right before the first frame is straight, and you can see how the bend of that leg is very subtle because, again, I'm trying to ease in. I'm trying to close up the spacing. Remember I talked to you earlier about like smaller spacing slows it down. So I'm trying to close up that spacing so I can kind of slow it down a bit. Straight, straight. So that's the logic behind the movement of that leg and trying to make that work. And there's a bunch of other things that you have to be mindful of with the legs, like the arcs of the knees and the ankles, and also just looking at where that knee is in space and making sure that the knee doesn't pop forward and pop back. Things like that. That's more like polishing and kind of splining because the IK of the leg has potential to pop. So you have to make some adjustments just to make sure that nice and smooth. Then we have like nice overlapping action in the arms. And looking at it from the front, you can see the weight shift. So nice weight shift side to side, and you can see how the hips are moving. The other thing that I didn't mention is just the movement of the shoulders. So you do have wide rotation in the shoulders, like the shoulders are moving relative to the arm swing, right? But there's also a little bit of tilt in the shoulders as well. So Z tilt. There's going to be a little bit which sort of opposes the tilt in the hips. So you can see here the hips are tilted up like this. So the shoulders kind of oppose that tilt just slightly. You don't want to have the same magnitude of tilt relative to the hips because it's going to feel like she's doing this, like there's too much movement in her shoulders, but just a little bit. It just helps with contrast and it also gives you a nice little curve in her spine. So her spine doesn't stay totally straight the whole time. So that's another thing you can add just to give it a bit more of a natural feel. All right. So that is it for my demo. So I'm gonna send it back to Bo for questions.
Awesome. That was really cool. Uh, it's really cool to see how much life comes in as soon as you go into splines and you get all that weight shift and those like those subtle hip changes, how much that really adds to the not just the weight of the character, but the life of the character. So we do have quite a few questions here, and for everyone here, definitely feel free to keep asking more questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can. If we can't get to them, then definitely save them for maybe some future webinars. So let's try to get through as many as we can here. So one of the first ones that we have here
Mhm.
are regarding the hips. You mentioned having the hips drop when you're going into that passing pose, as the weight kind of pushes up from the supporting leg and the passing leg kind of drags it down. Are there ever any cases where your characters will have the hip up on that passing leg, where the hips will kind of raise up during the passing pose?
That's a good point. I think it depends on the physicality of the person. I think generally it's not a fun it's not really a fundamental of a mechanic. I think the mechanic is more the hip on the passive side goes down because of the weight of the leg, mechanically speaking, but more the way that the person carries their weight. Some people actually walk with the hip going up on the passing side. It's more like a lumbering walk. Um, that could potentially be somebody who's a bit more heavy set, maybe not not always. Um, but yeah, it's not like the, all walks have to be the hips have to behave in this way. That's not the case. But in most cases, it's more this way. Another thing might just be like if a character is stepping over something. So if a character is stepping over a rock or something, then they would, you know, lift up their hip on the passing side. But yeah, there's no black and white rule that it always has to be the way that I demonstrated here with Stella.
Awesome. And then in terms of all of these things that you demonstrated, would all of this apply to 2D as well as CG? We've got a bunch of people wondering how these kind of go back and forth between the two forms.
Absolutely. I mean, um, it's just body mechanics. So it doesn't really matter what you use, what tools you use to animate. It could be stop motion. It could be traditional animation, hand drawn. It could be Toon Boom, digital, or 3D in this case. It's all just the mechanics of the walk. So any type of body mechanics, principles of animation, it all applies to all different types of animation.
It is cool how universal animation is. Once you understand the fundamentals, it kind of you can apply it to anything. It's just learning those techniques for the different tools. It's fascinating. Uh, so we do have some questions here regarding you had mentioned earlier that this is a vanilla walk. How would you apply these same principles to exaggerate this without going into a full demo? Like if you're
Yeah.
going to be more cartoony or you're going to add a lot more weight, make this a big muscular character with a lot of weight, how would you take those principles, those fundamentals, and then push them?
Typically, I mean, one area that that's the most obvious would be timing, right? So if you wanted a character with more weight, you would spend more time on the downs and less time on the ups, right? That would just keep the character a bit more like centered to the ground. If the character was lighter and had a bit more springy walk, then you would have maybe a little bit more hang time at the extreme up. If it was a happy walk, you could do a double bounce. You can have a couple of ups and downs, or a couple of ups. You would have two downs as well, but you could have a bit more of a bouncy walk to give the character a bit more of a happy personality. And then the other thing that you would do, sort of as a starting point, in order to stylize the walk, is to break out of the traditional extreme down, extreme up. The contact poses, for the most part, in the passive position, I mean, you kind of have to have the legs spread apart and the stride at the passive position. Kind of have to have one leg kind of swinging through and have a nice sense of balance. So those ones you could tweak a little bit, but where you can have a bit more flexibility and creativity would be the extreme down and the extreme up. So those are two poses where you would kind of focus more on finding different ways of posing those out to give it the character a bit more personality.
That's really cool. So it's just really just finding all of those different principles and exaggerating different elements of each one. And I'm assuming studying a lot of reference.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, Now we do have a few questions here regarding the rotations of the character. You were adding a lot of rotations into the hips and getting all of that detailed. Do you find that you add a lot of rotations, especially that forward back rotation, rotate X, to the spine and the torso, or do you tend to keep that more still for a vanilla style walk?
Yeah, I mean, there are controls there along the length of the torso. The only thing about that is that you don't want the torso to feel too rubbery. So you have to be very careful. You're going to use that. I think the only areas I'd probably use it mostly would just be a little bit of compression, a little bit of compression and contraction in the spine, like as the characters landing their steps. So there's a bit of squash and stretch in the torso. In terms of any type of rotation, I'd be for a vanilla walk, I'd probably not use those controls because then it starts to kind of layer on top of each other, and you might have a bit too much movement in the torso. So, if anything, I'd probably just do some TX or Y, I should say, to add a little bit of squash and stretch. The only thing that you could maybe do with the rotation and X on the cog or the torso is that through the extreme down, you could have a slight rock back on the torso here. Just kind of give her a little bit more of um, a slight rotation back, and that just helps to sell the weight of the step. As she puts her foot down, just rocking her body back a bit. This idea of opposing forces. So you have like one force going one way and another force going the opposite way. It just helps to make that force feel or that impact feel a little bit stronger. So that's one thing you can maybe try to do just to give it a little bit more weight. But otherwise, I'd probably just leave these controls alone for a vanilla walk.
And when you add that overlap in the body, is that something you do by copying like the translate Y of the hips and just applying that to the upper chest, or do you do that manually and build that uh, pose to pose?
Yeah, I don't necessarily like, I mean, for somebody who's beginning, that might be a good workflow because sometimes it's hard to judge offsetting of timing. But I would suggest kind of doing it more by eye and kind of understanding like when something eases, and that's when the next joint should start to follow through instead of just kind of going to the graph editor and shifting around curves.
Really getting the understanding of what it feels like to move it yourself versus just letting the computer handle it on its
Exactly.
own. Nice. And then do you add the overlap in the head as well during all
Yes.
of that?
Yeah, and again, I mean, you could start it with a bit of just offsetting of keys. Like at the extreme down, you can have the head tilted down a bit. At the extreme up, you can tilt the head up a little bit and just kind of offset the RX curve of the head relative to the up and down on the cog. Just kind of have it a little bit behind. But again, I kind of like to just kind of do it manually in the sense of understanding when the next joint starts to slow, whatever the leading joint is, whenever that starts to slow, that's when the the one previous starts to follow through. And I think that's just a better way of working, so you understand how those joints behave when relative to one another, the relationships between those joints.
Nice. Another bunch of questions we have in here. This is probably the most popular question here is knee pops. How?
Yes. Yeah.
So how do we remove knee pops? What are knee pops for someone who hasn't gotten to that stage yet?
Yeah.
And is there something that you can do to clean your workflow or approach your poses to avoid them or minimize them as much as possible?
Yeah, so knee pops, it's something with IK. There's a certain threshold that, as you're posing your character, the knee could potentially pop straight or pop bent, right? Like there's a certain threshold of movement that causes the IK to react that way. Um, so the way to try to alleviate that is to ease in and out of poses. So that's the best way of doing it. So if you're going from a bent leg to a straight leg, so in this case, if you look at again, the swinging passing leg, you can see how the leg sort of eases out of the bend and then it eases in to the straight leg, right? So the easing into the straight leg helps to avoid a potential pop, the leg popping straight. And then coming out of that, you can see how the leg here on frame 13, so 12 was a straight leg, on 13, it just starts to bend. So again, a little bit of an ease out, and then it continues to bend, and then that same leg goes straight right here. And again, I'm trying to get the spacing to get smaller and smaller leading into that straight leg. And the way I'm doing this is a little bit of a cheat. But the way I'm doing it is I'm grabbing this control on the heel of the foot, which is a scale control, and I'm using that frame by frame just to kind of dial in a little bit more bend or a little less bend in order to get that ease that I need. So I'll show you this leg stretch attribute. I just hold control and then I can just kind of use my mouse and go slide them side to side, and I can just adjust how much bend or how much straightening I have in that leg to help me with getting the eases to work. The other thing about the knees, not necessarily the IK, but the knees in general and how they could pop is tracking the arc of the knee. So I noticed with students who are beginning with a walk is that they run into a problem where they have, and this is what I talked about earlier, they have the knee too high up through the extreme up. They exaggerate it a little bit too much. So what happens is that the knee is swinging up this high, but then when it goes straight, it actually goes either straight down or it goes backwards, right? So you don't want the knee to go forward and then straight down, or forward, even worse, forward and then backwards. That will cause a pop in the arc of the knee. So you always want to make sure that you're tracking that arc, making sure that's moving in one direction, and also that it has a nice smooth shape to it, so it's not kind of changing direction too abruptly.
Yeah, that raising the foot too high is something I see quite often, and it adds so many pops. It's terrible. And as soon as you bring it down, it it's so much nicer. Uh, and then regarding the knee pops, do you ever find yourself overdoing the squash and stretch? So this is something I see a lot of in early student work is the to avoid the knee pops, they just use the leg stretch and just push it to the extreme to clean it as much as possible, and then the legs just feel like rubber.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips to avoid that? Um,
You just have to keep it very subtle. And what I like to say as a rule of thumb is that you should feel it and not see it. So you can kind of feel that there is that ease. I mean you do see the ease too, but you don't see it to the point where, like you said, Bo, that the leg looks like it's stretching. So you just want to keep it as subtle as possible. And really, for this type of walk, the adjustments that you make are very subtle anyways. So I don't think, as long as you use it in that way and not over exaggerate the amount, it should be fine. I think students get into trouble when their leg poses in general are exaggerated. So then they have to exaggerate the stretching even more in order to alleviate some pops. So if you keep the leg poses more natural looking, then the amount of adjustment and scale that you use should be fairly subtle. So it shouldn't be that much of a problem.
nice. So it's approaching the core mechanics, like you were mentioning it earlier, the 12 principles, the key poses first, making sure those are correct, and then using that leg stretch as a supplement versus using it as the first go-to solution.
Exactly.
Cool. And we had a couple of questions here, which is probably a tricky one. But how do you figure out how far the feet should be from each other?
Yeah, that's a really good.
Some people were saying they keep getting like super narrow feet and just looks like they're kind
Yes.
of Marvin the Martian walking in place.
Yeah.
Other times it's just way too wide.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and I see that a lot in student work where it's either too wide or it's too narrow. So I would just say, you have reference, and the reference is there to kind of guide you a bit. Obviously, you don't want to copy it. Reference isn't there to copy, but it's there to kind of give you a starting point. So use that as a guide, I would say, and try to keep the gait of the walk. Looking natural. I know that's kind of a cop out answer, but what you feel like when you look at somebody walk, understanding that there is a certain limit, normally to just like a general walk, and trying to remember that as you're animating and trying to create something that looks a bit more natural.
That's really cool. And kind of in that regarding like analyzing your reference, we have a few questions here on when people are getting started and first trying to analyze the reference like you were doing watching those weight hips in the video reference you had. Do you have any tips on what to look for, how to properly analyze a reference so that you're going down the right path and not just going in some random direction thinking you
Yeah,
got it right?
I think with reference, um, timing is like again, it's just a starting point. I wouldn't rely too much on the timing, but the posing, I think, like seeing how parts of the body relate to one another, like how there's lead and follow, like something starts to move and then something else starts to move. Um, Identifying that is very important. The timing, you can kind of like see that this is a bit slow, but this is a bit fast. Like it's more that kind of tempo stuff. But I wouldn't use the timing like a frame by frame type of thing. Um, and then the other thing that I would focus on is the center of gravity. Like how is the weight being carried in the character? That's really, really important because that's what's going to give your character a convincing sense of weight, especially if there's locomotion, right? Um, and then also identifying what are the key poses. What this pose is a key pose in telling communicating the acting, or this is a key pose in communicating the action, right? And identifying those, and in terms of the breakdowns, the pose that go in between, like between those two key poses, that's where I think as an animator, you can have a bit more fun. So there will in the live action reference, but I think those moments where you're transitioning from one key pose to the next, that's where you can really inject a bit more creativity. The key poses as well, obviously, you can definitely tweak those, make them play better for animation and exaggerate them. But really, the breakdown and the in-betweening is what's gonna really uh, bring the animation more to life. And again, with live action, not relying on it too much, like not leaning on it too much, just kind of using it as a framework, and then from there, building upon the movement with what you've learned as an animator and the 12 principles and all the experiences and knowledge that you have to take what's in live action and make it even better and stronger and more entertaining.
That's a really good answer. I like that. Uh, and then we're pretty much at time here. I think we have time for one more question. Probably the next biggest question we have here is arms. How? How to get the arms to overlap correctly? And kind of on that, how much overlap should be in the elbow, wrist, and fingers?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people wondering about that.
That's a really, really good question. Overlap in the arm, you can just think of it as a pendulum, basically. And I know that's kind of an easy answer, but it really is a pendulum. So you can think of the hand as being the ball joint of the pendulum. Then the elbow is like that joint in between, and then the shoulder is the platform. So the platform is kind of just swinging side to side. Um, Again, with the overlapping action for the arm, I would animate it more manually. I would start with the shoulder and animate that swinging forward and back like a pendulum. So you have nice tight eases at the extremes and faster to the middle, right? Making sure that has a nice sense of weight on the swing. And then I move down to the forearm, right? So as that upper arm starts to slow in its apex, that's when the forearm is going to follow through. And then as that arm starts to swing back the other way, then that forearm is going to drag. And then moving down to the hand would be the same thing. I'm going to look at the forearm, see where it starts to slow in its swing, and that's when the hand's going to follow through. In terms of like how much you should have, them follow through, like how much overlapping you should have. Just looking at it more from like a logical standpoint, if you look at the joint of the elbow, that's carrying the weight of the forearm and the hand. So there's more weight there compared to the wrist, where it's just the hand. So since there's more weight from the elbow, you would expect the forearm to swing a bit more than the hand, right? Just from a logical standpoint. But this being a stylized character, maybe you could push the overlap in the hand just a little bit more than you think you should, just because the character is a bit more cartoony. Um, but in general, I think the forearm would have more drag and follow through than the hand would, and the fingers would be even less than the hand. It'd be very, very subtle, just to keep it from feeling like the fingers are kind of moving around on their own.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I think that's pretty much the time we have. Unless, let's see, double checking here. Yeah, cool. So, thank you so much for doing this. Again, I apologize that we're not able to get to all of your questions. We've still got 38 questions that we haven't been able to get to. But if anyone wants to learn more about this, definitely let us know. We can always set up another webinar like this. There's a lot of talk about walks. So many things. But Don, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Thank you so much for going through such a cool demonstration and showing all the different steps like that. That was really, really cool to see.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone joining. And I hope you got something out of the webinar.
Judging by the responses, I think a lot of people got a lot of out of it. Now,
Perfect.
before everyone goes, we do have some more time with Tim and Mars, the animation mentor success coaches, who will be here to answer any questions. It's always nice to see you both jump on camera to answer any questions that any of you may have about Animation Mentor. So definitely feel free to hang out, ask more questions about that. But once again, Don, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's very much appreciated.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Hey, thanks,
Take
Don.
care,
Bye.
Don.
Bye.
So now, Tim and Mars, I'll let you guys take it away. Do your thing. I love the glasses, Tim. Very nice.
They are helping actually a little bit. So we're going to give an update next month and see where I'm at with them. But right now they're kind of like a midway thumbs up. We're going to see. I don't know.
Well, thanks, Bo. And hello, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, just watching. I love watching pros work. It's pretty cool just seeing
Yeah.
that demo. I was seeing some comments of like, wow,
How fast?
that usually takes me hours.
Yeah,
and,
right.
so yeah, just kind of seeing pros work, but also having Don really break that down, and really show how important reference is and all
Yeah.
about how the principles apply and all that sort of stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool because if you are looking around at, the things that he's done, if you go to his bio on the site, it's amazing because you have all these different kinds of animators, ones that are working on full on big major motion pictures that are longer, and then you got the ones that are kind of doing, television type stuff, which is super fast, right? It's a lot different than
Yeah.
that. And it's kind of neat because Don's got a little bit of both of those under his belt, which is really neat. He's actually teaching body mechanics coming up in the
Right.
winter term, as a matter
Winter
of
term.
fact. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and he's teaching right now in the fall term. So pretty
Yep.
cool. It was awesome.
Very, very cool. Well, we hope you've been enjoying these webinars. There's more coming up. And just, a brief introduction, if you guys don't know who we are student success coaches here at Animation Mentor. And what we do is we help students out with the admissions and registration process. We help out with tuition, payment plans, all that sort of stuff. We get you set up and make sure you're starting off with the right class for your skill set. And if you don't know about Animation Mentor, it goes much, much more beyond these free webinars. It goes way beyond that. We have an entire collection of courses from the very basics of learning Maya. You're mentioning body mechanics, acting courses. We have game animation courses. We have creature animation courses. So much stuff. We've got all kinds of short courses as well. We even have 2D animation, storyboarding, all kinds of stuff. So, we're the guys to talk to if you're interested in taking that next big step and moving beyond just a free 1 hour class, which is amazing, but really stepping in and actually signing up. That's what we're here for. So if you have any questions about that part of things, feel free to throw that in either the Q&A or the chat, and we're here for the next few minutes to answer any questions about the school too.
And Lauren, yeah, she asked a question, is Maya the preferred animation software? Yeah, I mean, people are using Blender and people are using Maya, but with us and honestly, the majority of the industry, Maya is going to be, the big dog on the block, if you will. And so that's where you should kind of go. There's actually quite a few people asking questions about, Maya, and maybe they haven't animated in Maya. And for folks that are like that are in that position, look into our 6-week Maya course. It's the
Yeah.
way to go. We got one starting January 6th. We got
Yep.
normally it's $6.99 on the website, but we do have that promo code that we can offer up to people
Talk
that
to
are
us.
on this thread, and they can get it for $4.99.
Yep.
And the cool part is they don't have to do the subscription service to the software itself. So you're able
Yeah.
to use the software for free while you're
That's a
hanging with us as a student, which is kind of sweet.
big value right there for sure. Let's see. I'm seeing some questions popping in the Q&A panel here. Alex Queen is asking, how does payment stuff work for Animation Mentor? Like, would someone be able to skip fundamental courses if they're coming to Animation Mentor with a bachelor's degree? Great question. So I'll answer the payment side of things first. Payments or tuition does vary by course, so it kind of depends on what course it is. Our 12-week courses, part of our 3D character or game animation program courses, those ones are eligible for installment plans. So what most students do is pay $500 to reserve their seat with the mentor of their choice, and then they can either pay the remaining balance before class begins, or you can pay monthly as well. So if you have questions about payment plans, you can go directly to the website or check in with us. We can help you out with that. And then great question about skipping classes. So yes, absolutely. We don't expect everyone coming in to start from the very beginning. Some students, have experience already, and we do have an advanced placement program for that. So when you do apply, all you need to do is include a link to your demo reel, and we'll get that in front of a mentor like Don and have them review your work and place you into the best class for your skill set. So we do have that as well. And check out animationmentor.com for the advanced placement program.
Yeah. And for Deanna, for 2D courses, programs we teach, well, we teach the actual, side of actual animation for 2D or 3D. It's up to you as far as for the 2D side, if you want to use and this will answer somebody else's question on here too. Toon Boom Harmony, Rough
Oh, yeah.
Animator. There's a
Yep,
bunch of
yep.
different, 2D animation softwares that you can use, but those are kind of like the main ones that most of our students are actually using here at the school. But yeah, and also Naomi, with regards to Maya, the main software for games too. Yeah, they're using Maya and they're using Unreal
Yep.
inside of the games courses here at the school. So hopefully that'll help. Rapid fire.
I've got another one here from Sharon. Sharon, I want to let you know I did see your message on Facebook, but we weren't monitoring all of those messages in real time because we were here. so
Yeah.
sorry we missed your message. Glad you made it. And there will be a recording sent out as well. But Sharon asks, do you have scholarships for people who don't make much? What I would say is talk to us. We always do what we can. Sometimes we have discounts, promo codes, sometimes some partial scholarships and stuff like that. So we should set up a time, if you're interested in attending, talk to us and we can, kind of work with you and see what we can do.
Yeah. And Joseph, if you're interested in joining, you reach out to Mars or myself, and we'd be more than happy to meet with you. We meet a lot of people via Zoom and kind of show them around, and we can do an old school phone call. If you like, we can do a little bit of everything if you like. Lauren, do you assist with job placement? Well, we have a killer job board that we do make available to not just students that have gone through our whole, character animation program, but even if you're just taking a workshop, you never lose access to the student campus and the job board that's pretty much updated every day with gigs from around the world on there. And then Caitlin has the 2D animation asking about what we're actually teaching, storyboarding and viz dev in there. In our 2D animation course, it's specific to 2D animation. You're either going to get Jay Jackson from Disney or T. Dan Hofstad, also Disney animator, teaching
Amazing.
either one of those. But
Yep.
the storyboarding courses and the viz dev courses are two separate components, and they're also 6-week workshops that you can kind of take in tandem, as a matter of fact, if
Yeah.
you wanted to.
Yeah. Olivia Tanking was asking, with Animation Mentor, do they help with student licensing? I'm wondering if you're talking about Maya. If so, absolutely. Yeah, we do. We're actually an authorized Autodesk learning partner. And what that means is we can actually provide licenses to students for free. So yeah, absolutely. You don't have to pay anything additional for Maya when you're a student of Animation Mentor.
Yeah, and with regards to Romney on there, are there past webinars or other free resources that give a taste of the classes? There is. You can go to our blog, and there's a lot of that stuff there that you can look at some past webinars on there. And you can also go to that online campus tour on the website so you can actually see what the online campus looks like. That's also going to kind of give you the vibe of how these courses work, what it looks like to go to your live Q&A, an e-critique, a dailies. All that stuff is broken in there too.
I know the guy that recorded that.
Yeah, you'll be sick of his voice at some point.
Christina Ames, I know Christina. Welcome. She was just asking, was the webinar recorded? Missed it. I'm sorry you missed it. Yes, it was recorded. I know you're in a different time zone, but we will be emailing out a recording for that. So you can also check out our blog site. It'll be there as well.
Cool. Alex Queen, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Let's see. During the this is from Agnes here. During the 12-week courses, are there classes every day? So our classes are actually once per week. So that's sort of the mandatory time to attend. But we do have additional live sessions Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. We got a lot of daily sessions, feedback sessions. We have workflow sessions. We've got open labs. We have additional webinars like this. And we even have a 12-hour open block called Working on Animation on Saturdays. So if you just want to hang out around other students while you're working on your shots, you can definitely do that as well. So very collaborative environment, but the mandatory sessions are 1 hour per week.
Yeah, yeah. And Jennifer, with regards to all the classes are live or recording, there's both. You have to attend those live Q&As for sure. That's how you should choose your mentor to begin with, is look at the schedule and then go into their bios like Don's and then
Right.
choose your mentor from there. But attending the live Q&A is vital. Getting your homework turned in on time it's Sunday at noon, also vital so that you can get your e-critique and your grade for your assignment as well.
Cool. I'm seeing a couple of questions here. I might be able to answer two with one. Feed two birds with one piece of bread? So do you offer certifications after completing a number of courses? So great question there. Yes, if you sign up for and are admitted to either one of our 18-month, either the 3D character animation program or game animation program, once you finish and successfully complete the 6th and final course in the program, you will receive a certificate of completion. But really, more importantly, what students are coming here for is they want to build a pro level demo reel. So that's really what you're going to be walking away with. And if you want a really great preview of what you can expect to do at the end of 18 months, you should check out our latest student showcase. If you haven't done that already, go over to YouTube or a blog and just type in Animation Mentor or check the student showcases on our website. We just released the 2024 student showcase. That's going to give you a really good idea of the type and quality of animation you can expect to be doing after 18 months. So yes, to certification, but more importantly, you're going to walk away with that pro level demo reel. And that's what you're going to be using to apply to hiring studios.
That's what they're going to look for first and foremost before they want to know anything else. Let's actually check your reel. Yeah, Christina, once you purchase a course, can you keep lessons in it? Yeah. I mean, once you're done, the only thing you won't have is the live stuff, but all the information and all the lecture material that's contained in the training tab on your profile, you never lose access to that stuff, which is really kind of cool. Same thing with all your old e-critiques. You can go back to it and see what your mentor said about your work, look at their suggestions for revision. So all that stuff is there for you to access forever and ever.
And ever. Here's another one. If you graduate from Animation Mentor, can you keep and use the rigs for future practice? So yeah, absolutely. So whatever rigs you've had in your course, and if you're a graduate of Animation Mentor, not only do you get to keep all of those rigs, but you have access to any future rigs that we develop as well. Yeah. So definitely you should. That's a huge perk, and you're able to use those for practice for your demo reel. There's some limitations. You can't be using those for your own shot that you're selling to some production company or something like that. So there's some limitations, but yeah, you're absolutely welcome to use those for personal practice, demo reels, stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah. Daria, right? Is there any internship in real industry? Yeah, actually, I was on Reddit earlier, and there was a couple people on there that just locked in the DreamWorks internship. Just saw it earlier today, and
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah, so that was kind of cool. So there are internships that are out there. We kind of like to train our students so that they're just ready to work, right? As animators, cool to be an intern if you can get into that position. But if they're hiring for animators, I feel like our students and the quality of the work that they're able to do puts them in a position where they're hireable as an actual animator.
Cool. Phew. There's a lot of questions.
Dude, a lot.
You fire, rapid fire.
Yeah.
um, cool. You know what we're doing tomorrow? We're actually not only celebrating my birthday, but it's going to be graduation. So
Oh,
it's
man, it's a crazy day tomorrow.
pretty exciting day tomorrow. So yeah, we're going to be celebrating a lot of students that have made that first step of actually learning the 12 principles of animation and made it all the way through 6 courses in graduating. So it's pretty
You
exciting.
baited them. Look at all the happy birthdays. You baited these. You got them. I'm telling you,
Oh,
right?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, right.
Tomorrow.
Mars is fishing. He's fishing. He's like, what's it? I got him. Yeah, man. Birthday. We're gonna and we'll throw in graduation.
It's a twofer.
It's a twofer for sure. Very
Uh,
cool. What else do
Look
we
at
have
that.
going on here?
You guys are too nice. That
Oh
makes me
yeah, look
happy.
at him. Look at him.
I'm gonna go back and watch the
I'm
recording.
waiting
I'm
for a
just gonna
question. How old are you? Somebody, right?
any guesses? Any guesses? I wonder how old do you think?
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna-
look at Izzy or Maddie. Make it Maddie. Right.
I'm gonna go back tomorrow and just watch this part and over again to see all the happy
Yeah, he's gonna
birthdays.
screen capture this right here.
19. I love it.
Very cool. Yeah. So classes for us guys, we got a lot of things going on. Our winter term's coming up January 6th. That's when all of our 12-week courses from character animation to our game character animation, they're all starting out. And then all of our workshops and courses that are 6 weeks and some of our creatures stuff, locomotion, fight or flight, those are also starting on January 6th. So the new year, we got a lot of new stuff that's going to be happening. And so if you're interested in getting started and dipping your toes in the water or just belly flopping into this thing, check us out, get your applications sent to us. If you already got experience in doing this stuff, and Mars had mentioned earlier, send us your demo reel so we can send it over to one of our mentors for a review. And then we come back and Mars and I will reach out to you to say, hey, we have your demo reel review. Here's the notes from it. Here's the class you're approved for. Let's figure out how to get you in.
Yep, we get back pretty quick on that stuff.
Yeah.
Here's another good question from Caroline. In your opinion, is 3D animation a more desirable skill than 2D animation? I want to do animation mentor specifically for the storyboard or 2D animation courses. Good question. So what I'll say is, animation mentor, we're founded by Pixar animators. Our DNA is really 3D animation. That's what we kind of specialize in. But we have storyboarding and 2D courses. The difference is, where are we going to be able to take you the furthest? That's really on the 3D side. We're going to prepare you to be a professional 3D character animator for feature film, TV shows, video games, creatures, all that stuff. On the storyboard, the 2D side of things, we have a couple of short courses, and it's definitely enough to get you started, but not really enough to prepare you for a career. So, what I tell students is, follow what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about 2D, you should definitely do 2D. If you want to do 3D as a professional, we can definitely prepare you for a career here. And I do think there's quite a bit more jobs, on the 3D side versus 2D.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're looking at the industry as a whole, I don't know if I would say more desirable skill, but I think there's definitely more work on the 3D side versus 2D.
Yeah, and I think that Maya course is just such a great way to sort of test the waters.
Yeah.
It'll help you. It's going to
Yep.
really help you to determine, do I really love this stuff? Right.
Yeah.
I think by
Yeah.
that third week of that workshop, they're like, man, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do forever.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And it gives you an opportunity to test drive Animation Mentor, really see what we talk
Yeah.
a lot about the community, but until you really experience it and you feel that when you're like, oh, wow, I actually have friends. I've met other people from around the world who love the same thing that I do. You really get to start to experience what the community is like. I think, you'll be hooked, but it's nice to really experience that. And the Maya course, like you said, is a really great way to kind of test the waters and really experience what it's like to be a student here.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Good stuff, man. Lots of great questions on there. Lots
Yeah,
of
yeah.
great birthday wishes too. So pretty good day.
I appreciate that.
What else we got here? Nobody else. Wow. Huh.
I think we answered everyone's questions.
Boom.
I think we did it.
Awesome.
I'm digging on that.
Well, if there's no other questions, we can. Oh, wait, I saw
Wait,
someone.
I saw-
Wait.
There's
Wait,
a wait.
wait.
Come on. What do you got?
Wait.
Oh,
Everyone just has to
Ellen,
stop.
I was just
Freeze.
waiting for an LOL.
got him.
LOL.
Yeah, and yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
So, if there are no other questions, feel free to jump in now. Let's see,
Yeah,
in the A&A Q&A.
we're getting played now.
Yes. So,
I know it.
as I say my final words, definitely feel free to keep typing in there. Thank you all so much for hanging out. Thank you, Mars and Tim, for taking the time to answer all these questions. It's always nice to have you in here, and it's very much appreciated. Once again, for everyone here, thank you so much for taking the time to sit in here. I know it's been an hour and a half almost. It's very much appreciated that you stayed here, asked all of those questions. And I know we didn't get to all of your questions during the main topic. Again, just let us know if you want to see more of these. Let us know what future topics you'd love to see. And like, let me know so I can set these up because I love these. It's so much fun nerding out about animation and all of this cool stuff. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time. Hope you all have a wonderful end of the week. Hopefully you have a wonderful weekend as well. For any animation mentor graduates here, which you might be a few, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow during the graduation.
Tomorrow, big day.
Yeah,
Boom.
big day. And yeah, we'll see you all later.
All right, we'll see you next
Take
time.
care, everyone.
Bye,
Happy,
guys.
Bye.
happy animating.